love me to death. Chapter 1. The Girl in the Photograph. Rain fell in slow, deliberate sheets, whispering against the narrow windows of the old townhouse. The world outside was gray, soaked in the scent of petrichor and rust, but inside, everything stood still quiet, except for the rhythmic ticking of a broken clock and the faint hum of the street lamp outside. Eleanor Hale stared at the photograph on her desk. A woman smiled from within the faded frame, dark hair, eyes bright as midnight glass. There was something familiar about that smile, something that made her heart twist even though she couldn't explain why. She shouldn't have found it. The envelope had no return address, no sender, just her name typed in cold serif letters. Inside, only this photograph and a single line scrawled in red ink, "You forgot me." Eleanor brushed her thumb over the image. The edges were frayed, the paper slightly damp, as though it had been carried through a storm. Her stomach knotted. She didn't recognize the woman, yet something deep inside whispered she should. A knock broke the silence. 3 sharp taps, measured, deliberate. "Ellie?" The voice belonged to Detective Adrian Ward, calm, precise, and slightly rough around the edges, like gravel under velvet. He leaned against the doorway, rain dripping from his coat. His eyes, storm gray, met hers, searching. "You didn't answer your phone." "I didn't hear it," she lied, turning the photograph face down. He stepped closer, brushing a wet strand of hair off his forehead. "You okay? You look pale." Eleanor forced a smile. "Just tired." He studied her for a long moment before setting a small folder on the table. "You might want to see this," he said quietly. Another one turned up. Her hands froze. Another one. She flipped the folder open. Inside were photographs, crime scene photos. A woman lying in the center of an empty park, her body arranged almost peacefully, her eyes open but vacant. A single red rose rested against her throat. And then, something that made Eleanor's pulse falter, pinned to the woman's dress, was the same photograph Eleanor had received that morning. The same woman, the same smile, only this time her lips were stained with blood. The air between them thickened. Adrian's gaze stayed on her, steady, unreadable. "We ran the prints. Nothing. No ID, no match in the system." Eleanor swallowed hard. "She's the same one. The photo—" "Yeah," he said, voice low. "And there's more." He opened another folder and spread out a map of the city. 5 red pins glimmered in the lamplight. 5 victims, all female, all found with a photograph. The same message every time. "You forgot me?" Her mind reeled. "How is that possible?" she whispered. "Why send me one now?" "That's what we're trying to figure out." He paused, then leaned closer. "You've been quiet since the last case, Ellie. Tell me the truth. Do you know her?" She hesitated. The truth was slippery, half-remembered shadows that slipped through her fingers. Every time she tried to reach for a memory, something inside her recoiled, like a door slamming shut. "I don't," she said, though it sounded like a lie even to her own ears. "I don't know her." Later that night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. The rain had stopped, but thunder still grumbled over the horizon. She sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker through the mist. The photograph lay on the table beside her, glowing faintly in the reflection of the lamp. She picked it up again. The woman's eyes seemed almost alive now, shimmering with a strange sadness. The longer Eleanor looked, the more she felt as though the woman were watching her back, pleading, mourning, remembering. She pressed the photo to her chest and closed her eyes. And then it came, the flash of something, a memory, a mirror, a scream, a hand gripping hers, covered in blood. Eleanor gasped, and dropped the picture. It fluttered to the floor, landing face up. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Hello? Static. Then a whisper. Eleanor. The voice was faint, feminine, trembling. Who is this? She demanded. The whisper grew clearer. You promised you'd never forget. Her breath caught. What? Who? A sharp click. Silence. Eleanor sat frozen, the phone still pressed against her ear. Her pulse pounded so hard it hurt. She slowly turned toward the photograph again. For a moment, she thought she saw movement, the faintest curve of the woman's lips changing, shifting into something almost sorrowful. A draft brushed past her neck. The window creaked open an inch. Something fluttered inside, the faint scent of jasmine and iron, and on the floor beneath the window, where the wind scattered raindrops like tiny stars, lay another photograph. This time, it wasn't of the unknown woman. It was Eleanor, her own face, taken from behind her as she sat at her desk earlier that evening. On the back, a single line written in red. Now do you remember me? She screamed. The sound tore through the still air, raw and trembling. The photo slipped from her hands, landing beside the other one. Two faces, one dead, one alive, side by side beneath the dim glow of the street lamp filtering through the curtains. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Adrian burst into the room, gun drawn. Eleanor! What happened? She couldn't speak. She could only point to the window, to the photographs, to the impossible truth lying there in plain sight. He crouched, picking up the image, his brow furrowed. When was this taken? I don't know, she whispered. It was just there. Adrian's jaw tightened. He walked to the window, peering out into the night. The street was empty. Only the rain and the faint sound of a distant church bell filled the air. He turned back to her, eyes hard. Lock every door. Don't go anywhere alone. Whoever this is, they're watching you. Eleanor nodded numbly, her mind spiraling. But as she stared at the photographs again, something else stirred beneath the fear. Not just terror, recognition. Somewhere in the recesses of her fractured memory, she knew that face. She knew that voice. She had whispered that same promise once, I'll never forget you. But she had. And now, someone was making sure she remembered. Outside, the storm began again. The clock on the wall ticked to midnight, and from across the street, through a sliver of shadow between the trees, a figure watched her window, still, patient, unseen. In his gloved hand, he held another photograph. The last one, Eleanor asleep, her face peaceful beneath the faint halo of lamplight. Across the bottom, a new message written in the same red ink. Tomorrow, you'll see me again. It'd be. Chapter 2, A Stranger's Shadow. Eleanor woke before dawn, drenched in sweat. The air in her apartment felt too still, too heavy, as if it were holding its breath. She lay there for a long time, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, replaying the voice on the phone in her mind. You promised you'd never forget. The words felt like a needle buried beneath her skin, impossible to pull out. She pushed the blanket aside, walked to the kitchen, and poured herself a glass of water. Her reflection trembled in the dark window, pale, hollow-eyed, unfamiliar. A chill crawled up her spine. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw someone standing behind her reflection, just beyond the glass, a shape, faint, blurred by rain streaks. She turned sharply. Nothing. Only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of sirens. When she arrived at the precinct later that morning, Adrian was already waiting for her. He looked exhausted, his tie loose, his coffee untouched. "Morning," he said. "You didn't sleep." "Neither did you," she replied softly. He gave a dry smile and slid a file across the table. "We got something. Security footage near the park where the body was found." Eleanor leaned closer. On the monitor, the footage flickered between static and darkness. Then a glimpse. A figure in a black coat, face hidden beneath the hood, walking slowly toward the park gate. "That's him?" she asked. "Could be," Adrian said. "Or her. Hard to tell." He paused, then added, "But there's something else." He clicked to the next frame. The figure was carrying something, a small, rectangular object, a camera. Eleanor's heart skipped. "He's taking pictures." Adrian nodded grimly. Every victim was photographed before she died. And guess what? Every photograph ended up sent to someone connected to her. Her breath caught. "Connected how?" "That's the part that doesn't make sense," he said. "The last one before yours was mailed to a retired painter who claims he'd never met her. The first one was sent to a priest, the second, a teacher. No links between any of them until now." He fixed his eyes on her. "You're the first one who actually matches the type." Eleanor frowned. "What do you mean?" Adrian hesitated. "The killer's letters, the handwriting, the ink, the phrasing, they're identical to a series of anonymous notes found in a psychiatric facility 5 years ago. Notes written to a patient named Eleanor Hale." Her pulse stopped. "That's not possible," she whispered. "I was never—" He reached into the file and handed her a faded record. Her name, her date of birth, her signature. But the address, the contact number, the details all wrong, all belonging to another woman who had vanished 5 years ago. A woman with her name. Eleanor felt the room tilt. This is a mistake." Adrian looked at her carefully. "We checked. The handwriting matches the note that came with your photo." That night, she walked home alone. The rain had started again, soft and persistent, a whispering sheet that made the streets gleam like black glass. The world around her felt unreal, distant, muffled, as though she were watching it from underwater. Halfway down the block, she felt it, the weight of eyes. She turned slowly. The street behind her was empty, except for the faint glow of a lamp-post and the rhythmic sway of a sign in the wind. Yet the feeling didn't fade. Someone was there, watching. She walked faster. Her heels clicked too loudly on the pavement. Every corner seemed to hide a shadow. Every reflection in a dark window felt like a heartbeat waiting to reveal itself. When she reached her building, she pushed through the door, her fingers trembling as she locked it behind her. She pressed her back against the wall, exhaling shakily. She told herself it was paranoia. The investigation, the stress, the lack of sleep. But then she saw it on the doormat. Another envelope, no name, no address, just a faint smear of red. She picked it up with numb hands and tore it open. Inside was a single Polaroid, her bedroom window, taken from across the street, and behind the curtain, barely visible, a figure, watching. Her hand shook so violently she dropped the photo. It fluttered to the ground, landing face down. There was something written on the back, in the same red ink. "You left me behind." She called Adrian immediately. He arrived within 15 minutes, his gun drawn, eyes scanning every corner of the apartment. He checked the locks, the windows, the fire escape, even the rooftop. Nothing. No footprints. No sign of forced entry. "Whoever it is," he muttered, "he's good. Knows how to vanish." Eleanor sat on the couch, clutching the Polaroid in both hands. "What does he want from me?" Adrian hesitated. Maybe not you, he said quietly. Maybe the you that came before. She looked up sharply. What's that supposed to mean? He took a deep breath. The hospital record, the notes, the handwriting, whoever's doing this knows things that only someone close to her would know. Maybe this isn't random. Maybe he thinks you are her. Eleanor's voice trembled. And if he's right, then we need to find out who she was. They spent the next morning in archives, dusty rooms filled with fading documents, police files, and the faint scent of old paper. Adrian sifted through the psychiatric records while Eleanor searched old city directories. Hours passed in silence until she froze at a small water-stained file. Hale, Eleanor admitted 2019, discharged 2020. Diagnosis, dissociative amnesia. She opened it slowly. Inside were pages of session notes, each written in looping, elegant handwriting. Patient demonstrates recurring dreams of a faceless woman, reports hearing her name whispered at night, claims she cannot remember the lake or the promise. Her vision blurred. She clutched the paper tighter. At the bottom of the final page, a doctor's note read, Patient discharged after final session with Dr. Vincent Rowe. Status: missing. Vincent Rowe, she whispered. That name. Adrian looked up. You know him? She shook her head slowly, but her voice was faint. No, I don't think so. But I dream about a man by that name. I didn't even know it was real. Adrian stared at her. Eleanor, are you telling me you've dreamed of him before we found this file? She nodded. A long silence stretched between them. Then we're not chasing a killer, he said finally. We're chasing your past. That night, when Eleanor closed her eyes, she found herself standing by a lake. The air smelled of wet earth and lilacs. The water shimmered under moonlight, and there, on the far side of the lake, stood a man in a dark coat, watching her. He smiled. Eleanor, he whispered, you came back. She tried to move, to speak, but her voice caught in her throat. He stepped closer, and she saw his face sharp, symmetrical, almost too perfect. But his eyes, there was something wrong with them, something hollow. He reached out a hand, and as his fingers brushed hers, she saw blood blooming across the water like ink spilled on silk. She woke screaming. Her sheets were soaked in sweat, her breath ragged. And on the nightstand, beside her lamp, lay another Polaroid she had never seen before, the lake, and standing in the middle of it her own reflection, half submerged, eyes open, staring straight at the camera, written below it, in that same crimson ink. You killed me, Eleanor. Chapter 3. The Man by the Lake. Morning arrived, gray and cold. The light filtering through the blinds painted bars across the floor, like a prison. Eleanor sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the Polaroid in her hands. Her reflection half drowned, lifeless, stared back. The words at the bottom bled crimson into the glossy surface. You killed me, Eleanor. She could almost taste the iron in those letters. Her first instinct was to tear the photograph apart, to destroy it, to make the nightmare vanish. But something inside her, something dark and familiar, wouldn't let her. She traced the outline of her face in the picture, her heart hammering. The lake, the blood, the man. She could feel it. It wasn't just a dream. It was a memory clawing its way back. When Adrian arrived, she was still sitting there, the photo trembling in her grip. He froze when he saw it. Jesus, he muttered. Where did you get that? It was here when I woke up, she whispered, on my nightstand. He rubbed a hand through his hair. Windows locked, doors locked, no sign of forced entry. Either you're sleepwalking or he's been inside your home. Don't, she snapped, her voice cracking. Don't say that. Hermanas. Adrian's tone softened. Then we have to assume he's close. Someone who knows how to move unnoticed. Someone who knows you. Eleanor stood abruptly. I don't know anyone like that. He stared at her hard, searching. Are you sure? Her lips parted, but no sound came, because deep down she wasn't sure at all. They drove north, out of the city. Following the faint lead buried in the hospital records, Dr. Vincent Rowe. The address listed was by an old psychiatric retreat on the outskirts of Blackwood Lake, a place long abandoned after a fire 20 years ago. The road was narrow and winding, shrouded in fog. The trees leaned in close, their branches tangled like fingers trying to keep secrets. This is the lake from your dream, isn't it? Adrian asked quietly. She didn't answer. Her hands were clenched so tightly on her lap that her knuckles had turned white. Her pulse quickened with every bend of the road, every glimpse of water glinting through the mist. Finally, they reached it. The lake spread out before them like a dark mirror, still, reflective, endless. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. At the far end stood the ruins of a building, charred stone walls, ivy creeping through broken windows, the old asylum. Inside, the air was heavy with silence. Each step echoed like a whisper. Adrian led with his flashlight, the beam cutting through the dark. Be careful, he murmured. This place could collapse any minute. Eleanor's gaze swept over the walls, faded medical charts, peeling paint, fragments of old photographs scattered across the floor. One photograph caught her eye. She bent down to pick it up. A young woman, smiling, holding flowers. The same woman from the first photograph, the one who'd been murdered. Eleanor felt her throat tighten. She was here, she whispered. She was one of the patients. Adrian knelt beside her. You think she's the one who's been sending the photos? Eleanor shook her head. She's dead, but she's the one I keep seeing, the one who keeps talking to me. Her voice broke on the last word. They moved deeper into the hallways until they reached a door still intact. The brass plate on it read, Dr. Vincent Rowe, Psychiatry and Memory Therapy. Eleanor's heart stopped. Adrian tried the handle. It was locked. He kicked it once, hard, and the door burst open, slamming against the wall. Inside, the office was almost perfectly preserved, as if time had held its breath. Books lined the shelves. A desk stood in the center, covered in dust, but neatly arranged papers, files. A fountain pen still resting beside an open journal. Eleanor's name was written across the top of the page. Session #47 Eleanor Hale. Date June 5th, 2020. Patient progressing slowly. Still denies involvement in the incident at the lake. Recurring nightmares suggest repression of guilt. Continues to hallucinate the woman she calls Lena. Possible shared trauma or projection of self-blame. Lena, Eleanor whispered. That's her name. Adrian's voice was low. You remember her? She closed her eyes. And then it came back like a tide breaking through. Two women standing at the water's edge, laughter tangled in the air. A promise whispered beneath the trees. We'll never be apart. And then a scream, a struggle, hands slipping beneath the surface, blood spreading through the water. Her knees gave way, and Adrian caught her just before she fell. Hey, he said softly, look at me. You're okay. No, she breathed. I'm not. When she opened her eyes again, they were back at the car. Adrian was talking to someone on the phone, his expression grave. Yeah, Forensics should check it. There's evidence here, old but solid. Pause. No, she's stable. Shaken, but stable. He hung up and turned to her. You didn't kill anyone, Eleanor. That's what he wants you to believe. She looked at him helplessly. But what if I did? Then we'll find out, he said firmly. Together. She wanted to believe him. But somewhere deep inside, she could feel it, the cold, unshakable certainty that something monstrous had happened that night, something she had buried, and someone was determined to make her remember. That night, Eleanor stayed at Adrian's apartment. He gave her the bedroom and slept on the couch, his gun within reach. The city was quiet, but her mind wouldn't stop turning. She sat awake for hours, watching the moon drift behind the curtains. At 3:17 a.m., she heard it, a whisper, soft, close, almost tender. Eleanor. She froze. Her reflection in the mirror flickered, and behind her, just for a moment, she saw the silhouette of a woman standing in the corner of the room, the same woman from the photographs. Lena, her face pale, dripping with lake water, her eyes glistening with something between grief and rage. Eleanor couldn't breathe. Lena raised a trembling hand and pointed straight at her reflection. The mirror cracked, and the whisper came again. He's not who you think he is. Eleanor screamed. Adrian burst in, gun drawn, but the room was empty. No intruder, no ghost, only shards of glass glittering on the floor. He dropped the gun and held her as she trembled. Ellie, he whispered, it's over. You're safe. But behind him, on the wall, where the mirror had shattered, a new message had appeared, written in red. He's lying. Thank you, Heaven to Pride, and aided Folo Selvenhamble. Chapter 4. The Red Thread. The following morning broke with an eerie calm. Sunlight spilled weakly through Adrian's blinds, painting fractured stripes across the floor. Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed, knees drawn to her chest, staring at the cracked wall where the message had been written. The red words were gone, wiped clean. She looked at Adrian, who was standing at the door holding 2 cups of coffee. You erased it, she said flatly. He didn't answer right away. You were hysterical. I didn't want you waking up to it again. You shouldn't have done that. Eleanor, you shouldn't have touched it, she shouted, startling even herself. The sound of her own voice, sharp and shaking, echoed through the small apartment. Adrian sighed, set the coffee down, and sat across from her. You think I'm lying to you? I don't think anything, she muttered, her voice cold. I just don't know what to believe anymore. He leaned forward slightly. Then believe this, whoever is doing this knows you. He's manipulating you, trying to make you doubt everyone, including yourself. That's what stalkers do. She met his eyes. And yet, somehow, every time something happens, you're the first to show up. He didn't flinch, but something passed across his face, a flicker, gone too fast to read. You think I planted those photographs? He asked quietly. She didn't answer. They drove to the archives again that afternoon. Adrian said he wanted to trace Lena's records to verify if she was ever officially reported missing. Eleanor barely spoke the entire drive. Her mind replayed the vision from the night before the mirror, the whisper, he's not who you think he is. Every instinct screamed at her to trust no one, not even him. The archive building loomed at the edge of the city, a relic of another century, its stone facade cracked, its marble steps slick with rain. Inside, the air smelled of paper and ghosts. Adrian approached the reception desk. We're looking for files from Blackwood Asylum, circa 2018 to 2020, he told the clerk. The man nodded. Shuffling off into the back room, Eleanor wandered through the aisles. The shelves were endless thousands of files, each one holding a life reduced to paper. She felt dizzy, as though every folder whispered her name. Her hand brushed one marked L. Mercer. She froze. Lena Mercer. The folder was thin. Inside were only 3 pages. The first was a patient intake form. The second, a progress report signed by Dr. Vincent Rowe. The third, a police notice of death. Deceased. Cause, drowning. Location, Blackwood Lake. Date, the 5th of June 2020, the exact same date as her last recorded therapy session. Eleanor's breath caught. June 5th, the night from her dreams, the night Lena died. Adrian returned just as she reached the bottom of the file. Find anything? She handed it to him without a word. He scanned it quickly, his jaw tightening. Christ, he murmured. She really existed. Of course she existed, Eleanor whispered. I didn't imagine her. He nodded slowly. And you didn't kill her either. She looked up sharply. How do you know that? Because the coroner's report says the body was found 2 weeks later. You were still under psychiatric care. You couldn't have been there. Take hands. Eleanor exhaled, a trembling, broken sound. For the first time in weeks, she almost believed she might not be the monster her dreams told her she was. But then, Adrian's phone buzzed. He frowned and stepped aside to answer. Ward, he said curtly. A pause. Then his voice dropped lower. What? When? Eleanor watched his expression change, his face tightening, eyes darkening with something between anger and disbelief. He hung up and turned to her. Someone broke into the police evidence locker last night. Her stomach turned. What did they take? The case file, he said. Everything tied to the Blackwood murders, including the photos. Photos of what? He hesitated. You don't want to see them. Tell me. He met her gaze. They were photos of you from the asylum. The room tilted. She gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. That's not possible, she whispered. I wasn't. Yes, you were, he said quietly. I checked the hospital logs myself. You were admitted under a different name, Eleanor Mercer. Mercer. Her throat went dry. That's Lena's last name, she said. Adrian nodded. Sisters. The word hit like a blade. Her mind cracked open memories, flooding in like black water. 2 girls by the lake. The younger, laughing. The older, whispering, Don't go too far. A splash. A scream. A hand reaching but not in time. Eleanor staggered back. No, that can't be. She drowned, Adrian said softly. You survived, but you didn't remember. She pressed her palms to her temples. I didn't kill her. No, but you were there. The sky outside had darkened by the time they left the archives. The air was heavy, filled with the scent of rain. As they reached the car, Eleanor stopped short. Something glimmered beneath the windshield wiper, a Polaroid. Adrian reached for it first, but she grabbed it from his hand. Her heart nearly stopped when she saw the image. The photo showed Adrian standing in the asylum hallway, his flashlight raised, taken from behind him. On the back, written in the same red ink, he took her first. She looked up at him. His face had gone pale. Who's doing this? She whispered. Who took that picture? Adrian's jaw tightened. Get in the car. Answer me. Get in the damn car, Eleanor, he snapped. The sudden anger froze her in place. She stared at him, really stared, and saw something in his eyes she hadn't before. Not kindness, not concern, fear. And behind the fear, guilt. He saw her looking and forced a calm smile. Ellie, please. We have to go." Her pulse thundered. Her hand drifted toward the car door. Then she noticed it on his wrist, just above his sleeve. A faint red thread, tied like a bracelet. She remembered that thread. Lena used to wear it. It was the one thing she always refused to take off. Eleanor stepped back. "Where did you get that?" she asked quietly. Adrian's smile faltered. "What?" "The thread. On your wrist." He glanced down, then covered it with his sleeve. "It's nothing," but she could see his pulse beating beneath it. "Tell me where you got it." Adrian's voice lowered. "Get in the car, Eleanor." She didn't move. He reached out, slowly, almost gently, but she could see it now. The faint trembling in his fingers, the cold calculation behind his eyes. The man she had trusted. The man who had been there first every time. And somewhere deep inside her, Lena's voice whispered again, "He's not who you think he is." Eleanor turned and ran. The rain began to fall, sharp and cold, slashing against her face as she sprinted down the empty street. Behind her, Adrian shouted her name, but she didn't look back. She ran until her lungs burned, until the lights of the city blurred into gold and black. When she finally stopped, she was standing at the edge of the river, the same water that fed into Blackwood Lake, the same current that had taken her sister away. She fell to her knees, clutching the Polaroid to her chest, and when she lifted her head, she saw it reflected in the rippling surface of the river, a figure standing behind her, still, watching, and holding a camera. Chapter 5. The House of Mirrors. The air around her rippled like a fevered dream. Eleanor's breath clouded in front of her as she turned slowly toward the figure. The man stood beneath a flickering street lamp, the camera hanging loosely in his hand. The rain painted him in streaks of silver and shadow. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Adrian?" she whispered. The figure tilted its head slightly but said nothing. The light from the lamp swayed in the wind, falling across his face. It wasn't Adrian. The stranger was older, his features sharp and hollow, his expression unreadable. But there was something hauntingly familiar in the set of his eyes, like a reflection distorted by time. "Who are you?" she demanded. He stepped forward. "I'm the one you forgot." His voice was low, calm, measured. Her skin prickled. "You're the one sending the photographs." He smiled faintly. "No, Eleanor, you're the one taking them." She stumbled back. "That's not true." He took another step closer. "You think you've been haunted by ghosts, but all I did was show you the truth. You've been sending yourself reminders. You're lying." "Am I?" His gaze darkened. "Tell me, do you remember him?" Her throat tightened. "Who?" "He's a debt for your doctor." His voice was almost tender. "Vincent Rowe." The name hit her like a knife. She remembered flashes, the scent of antiseptic, the weight of his hand on her shoulder, the calm rhythm of his voice during their sessions. But there was something else, something colder. The night at the lake, the argument, the scream, and the promise. "If she dies, so do you." The man smiled again, as if reading her thoughts. "You buried what really happened, but not deep enough. That's why I came back to finish what you started." He raised the camera. A flash. The light exploded in her eyes, searing white across the darkness. She fell back, blinded. When her vision cleared, the man was gone. Only the echo of his words remained. "You're the one taking them." By the time Adrian found her, she was sitting on the wet concrete, trembling, the world around her spinning. He knelt in front of her, grabbing her shoulders. Eleanor, what happened? Talk to me. She stared past him, into the rain. He was here. Who? The man with the camera. Adrian's grip tightened. Did you see his face? Yes, she whispered. And he said something impossible. Adrian's eyes flickered with a strange intensity. What did he say? That I took the pictures. He froze. Eleanor searched his face for reassurance, but what she saw instead was fear and something else, fleeting but real, recognition. You know who he is, she said quietly. Adrian didn't answer. Tell me, he exhaled shakily. Vincent Rowe. Her breath caught. That's not possible. He's dead. No, Adrian said. He disappeared. After Lena's death, he vanished before the police could question him. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because, Adrian said slowly, I didn't know how to tell you the rest. The rest? He hesitated, his voice cracking. Because Vincent Rowe was my father. The world collapsed into silence. For a long time, Eleanor couldn't breathe. The sound of the rain vanished. The city faded into static. Your father? She whispered. Adrian nodded, his face unreadable. He worked at Blackwood. I was a teenager then. He told me about you, about his patient who believed she'd killed her sister. He said you were fragile, that you needed protection. Her stomach churned. You knew who I was this whole time. Yes, he said softly. But I didn't know you were her. Not until the photographs started appearing again. Eleanor took a step back. You lied to me. I was trying to protect you. Protect me? Her voice broke into a hollow laugh. From what him? Or from the truth? He didn't answer. I saw him tonight, she whispered. Vincent Rowe, he's alive. Adrian's jaw tightened. Then he's coming for you. They drove through the storm, heading back toward Blackwood Lake. Neither spoke. The road wound through the forest like a vein of darkness. When they reached the ruins of the asylum, the fog was so thick it swallowed the trees whole. The building loomed like a skeleton in the mist. Adrian cut the engine. Stay in the car, he said. Eleanor didn't move. If he's your father, he won't hurt you. Adrian looked at her, and for the first time, there was something haunted in his eyes. You don't know what he's capable of. He stepped into the fog, flashlight in hand. His figure disappeared within seconds. Eleanor sat there, trembling, staring at the silhouette of the asylum through the windshield. Then she heard it, the faint sound of piano music drifting through the rain. Her breath caught. It was the melody from her dreams, the song Lena used to play. She opened the door and stepped out. Inside, the air was cold and wet. The sound of dripping water echoed through the halls. The piano music grew louder, clearer, guiding her down the corridor. She followed it until she reached the main hall, the place where she had found her file days before. The piano stood against the far wall, dust coating its keys. A single candle flickered beside it, and sitting before it, hands hovering over the ivory, was Vincent Rowe. He looked older now, his hair silvered, his face lined, but his eyes still carried that same unearthly calm. Eleanor, he said softly, you came back. She couldn't move. Why are you doing this to me? He smiled faintly. Because you still don't remember the truth. I remember everything, she said. The lake, Lena, the night she... No, he stood, the candlelight dancing across his face. You remember what your mind allowed you to remember. You remember guilt, but not the reason. He stepped closer. Do you remember why she was at the lake that night? Eleanor shook her head. She wanted to swim. His had. He smiled sadly. No, my dear. She wanted to leave. Leave? She came to me. She told me she couldn't watch you suffer anymore. She said you were sick, that you'd hurt her before, that she was afraid of what you might do. Eleanor's blood ran cold. That's a lie, she whispered. Vincent's eyes darkened. You tried to kill her, Eleanor, and when she tried to run, you dragged her into the water. I tried to save you both, but she was gone before I could reach her. Her breath came in ragged gasps. No, he stepped closer, cupping her face gently. You killed her, but I forgave you. I loved you, as my daughter could not. She stumbled back, choking on tears. You're insane. Always, he smiled. Perhaps, but so are you. The door creaked open behind them. Adrian stepped in, gun raised. Step away from her. Vincent turned slowly, almost peacefully. Hello, son. Adrian's voice was tight. It's over, Vincent chuckled softly. No, Adrian, it's just beginning. She deserves to know who she really is. He looked back at Eleanor, eyes glinting with something dark and ecstatic. Tell him, Eleanor. Tell him your real name. She shook her head. Stop. Vincent's voice rose, sharp and wild now. Say it. Her lips trembled. And then, suddenly, like a window shattering in her mind, it came back. Lena's voice, soft and trembling in the dark. You're not Eleanor. You're me. Her own laughter cracked, desperate. We're the same person. The mirror, the lake, the two reflections merging, not two sisters. One fractured mind. Eleanor gasped. No. Vincent smiled, tears in his eyes. Yes, my darling girl. Lena died that night, but you survived. You became her. You became both. Adrian's gun lowered slowly, disbelief clouding his face. And then Vincent whispered, You killed my daughter, and I made you forget. The candle flickered. The light went out, and in the darkness, Eleanor finally screamed. Chapter 6. The mirror beneath the water. The scream tore through the asylum like thunder, raw, primal, almost animal. Eleanor's voice echoed down the rotting corridors, bouncing off cracked tile and peeling walls until it broke into silence. When she opened her eyes, the candlelight was gone. So was Vincent. Only Adrian remained, standing in the shadows, the gun trembling in his hand. Eleanor, his voice cracked. Tell me it's not true. She pressed both palms to her temples, shaking her head violently. No, he's lying. He's trying to make me believe it again. Again? Adrian's voice wavered. What do you mean again? She stopped. Her mind flickered with fragments, therapy rooms, whispered words, a lake at dusk, her own reflection splitting in two. She couldn't tell which memory was real anymore, which self was. A sound cut through the silence. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate, rhythmic. Eleanor froze. Adrian raised his gun toward the doorway. From the darkness beyond, Vincent's voice drifted out, calm, distant, almost mournful. You see now, don't you? You never had a sister. Lena was what your mind created to carry the pain. When she died, you buried half of yourself in the lake. He stepped back into the light, his face half lit by the flickering flame of another candle. In his hand, he held a photograph wet, as if just pulled from the water. Eleanor's stomach lurched when she saw it. It wasn't Lena this time. It was her, standing beside Vincent, smiling, his arm around her shoulder. The handwriting on the bottom read, My beautiful daughter, Eleanor Rowe. Her knees gave out. Adrian caught her before she hit the ground. No, she whispered, voice cracking. That's not me. That's her. That's... Vincent's expression softened. It's you. You were my patient and my child. I took you in after your parents died. I tried to help you. But when the guilt consumed you, you created Lena the perfect twin, the one who could carry your sins. Adrian's eyes widened. You knew what she was and you used her. Vincent smiled faintly. No, I loved her. Both of her. Adrian's gun clicked. You experimented on her. You broke her. Vincent didn't flinch. She was already broken. The air shifted. Something deep inside Eleanor's chest cracked open a flood of sensations she'd long buried. The lake, the cold, the water rising over her lips. Lena screaming, "You promised, don't leave me!" And then silence. But she was still breathing. Lena wasn't. Her nails dug into her palms as she whispered, "I killed her." Adrian turned sharply to her. "No, Eleanor, listen to me." But her eyes had gone glassy, far away. "I killed her, and I became her. That's why I kept seeing her. That's why she was in the mirror." Vincent stepped forward, his voice like silk. "Yes, my darling, you're remembering. Head, and a day de saving on any of us." Adrian raised his gun again. "Stay the hell away from her." "She deserves to know," Vincent said. His tone hardened, slipping into something darker, colder. "She's been living a lie, our lie." "Your lie," Adrian spat. "You built her madness." Vincent's smile faltered. "You still don't understand, do you, son? This was never about you or me. It's about her finishing what she started." He turned to Eleanor. "Go back to the lake, child. The truth is waiting." Eleanor's body moved before her mind caught up. She stumbled out of the asylum into the rain, her bare feet splashing in the mud. The fog was thicker now, glowing faintly under the reflection of the moon. "Eleanor!" Adrian shouted, chasing after her. "Stop!" But she didn't stop. The lake shimmered ahead, vast and black, a perfect mirror of the sky. The water seemed to breathe, pulling the mist inward with each gust of wind. She stepped to the edge. The mud gave way beneath her heel. Behind her, Adrian caught up, grabbing her wrist. "Listen to me," he pleaded. "You're not her. You're not what he says you are." She looked at him through the rain, her hair plastered to her face. "You don't understand. She's still down there." Adrian's voice broke. "No one's down there." "She's waiting," Eleanor screamed. And then, from across the water, a figure rose through the fog, translucent, shimmering, half submerged. It was Lena. Her white dress billowed beneath the surface like smoke. Her eyes, wide and hollow, locked with Eleanor's. "Come back," she whispered. "Finish what you began." Eleanor's pulse roared in her ears. She took a step forward, then another. Adrian lunged to pull her back, but Vincent appeared from behind the trees, grabbing his son by the shoulder. "Let her go," Vincent hissed. "This is her redemption." Adrian struggled. "You're insane!" Vincent's grip tightened. "If you stop her now, she'll never be whole." "It is no." Eleanor stood ankle-deep in the water, the ripples circling her like a spell. Her reflection wavered, splitting into two faces, hers and Lena's. One alive, one dead, both the same. Her breath trembled. "Lena, I'm sorry." The ghost smiled. "Then remember." The wind howled. The surface of the lake erupted, black waves crashing outward, the candlelight from the asylum window flickering like a heartbeat. Adrian finally tore free from his father's grasp, sprinting toward the water. "Eleanor!" But it was too late. She stepped forward and vanished beneath the surface. The ripples swallowed her whole. Adrian dove in after her, the cold slashing through his veins like glass. The water burned his lungs as he sank deeper and deeper, the light above fading to darkness. And then there she was, Eleanor, suspended in the murky depths, her hair drifting like ink, her eyes open and calm. Opposite her floated Lena. Their fingers touched. The water shimmered around them, gold and red and black, as if the lake itself were bleeding. And then the two figures merged, the outlines collapsing into one. Eleanor's scream, Lena's scream burst through the water like thunder. Adrian broke the surface, gasping, pulling Eleanor's limp body onto the shore. He cradled her against his chest, rain pounding down. "Ellie," he whispered, "wake up. Please wake up." He saved thee. Her lips moved. For a moment, he thought she was gone. Then she exhaled. Her eyes opened slowly. But something was wrong. They weren't Eleanor's eyes, nor were they Lena's. They were both burning with a strange, lucid calm. She sat up slowly, her expression serene. "It's quiet now," she whispered. "She's gone." Adrian touched her cheek. "Eleanor?" She smiled faintly. "No," she said. "Not anymore." He froze. "What do you mean?" She turned to look at the lake, the water now perfectly still, reflecting the moon. "I remember everything," she murmured. "And I remember you." Adrian frowned. "What?" Before he could finish, she reached into her coat pocket and pulled something out. A Polaroid camera. She aimed it at him. Flash. The light blinded him for a moment. When his vision cleared, she was standing calm, composed, almost peaceful, holding the photo between her fingers. On the Polaroid, his image glowed faintly in the wet light. She turned it toward him and whispered, "You're the one who lied." Behind them, on the far shore, Vincent Rowe stood watching, his reflection shimmering beside him like a ghost. He smiled the faint, twisted smile of a man who knew the end had already begun. And beneath the surface of the lake, two voices whispered as one, "Remember me, Owe." Chapter 7. The Last Confession. The rain eased into a whisper, the kind that falls after the storm has already devoured everything. The lake shimmered under the half-moon like a bruise healing slowly, rippling faintly in the silver light. Eleanor, or whatever name she now wore, stood motionless at the water's edge, her hair tangled, her eyes unreadable. The Polaroid camera dangled from her hand, a small square of truth and destruction. Adrian sat on the ground, soaked, shivering, staring at her. "You took that photo," he said finally, his voice raw. "Why?" She smiled gently. "Because it's what I do. I keep moments alive, even the ones that shouldn't be remembered. And I find," he frowned, struggling to stand. "You're not making sense." "I never did," she whispered. "Not until tonight." The silence between them stretched thin, humming like a live wire. Adrian stepped forward cautiously. "Eleanor," he said, "or Lena, whoever you think you are, just listen. We can fix this. We can—" She cut him off with a soft laugh. It wasn't cruel. It was sorrowful, almost tender. "You still don't understand, do you?" she said. "You're the one who broke everything." He froze. "What?" "The truth," she murmured, "is that you were there. That night, you were at the lake." His breath hitched. "No." She lifted the camera again, her fingers trembling slightly. "You followed him. You followed your father. You saw what he did to her, what he did to me." "That's not true," Adrian said, his voice shaking. "I wasn't there." She stepped closer. The rain had stopped completely now. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You were." The world seemed to narrow around them, the air thick with memory. Eleanor reached into her coat pocket and pulled out another photograph, a Polaroid that hadn't been there before. She handed it to him. The image was blurry but clear enough to wound. A man, Adrian, standing at the lakeside, his father kneeling beside a lifeless body, Lena's body. The moonlight fractured across the water. Below the photo, in blood-red ink, a sentence glared back at him. You helped him hide her. Adrian staggered backward, the picture slipping from his fingers. That's not. He stopped, clutching his head as fragments of memory flooded in. He had been there. He'd been 17. He'd followed his father that night, afraid, confused. He'd seen the girl sink beneath the water, her hair spreading like ink. And when Vincent turned to him, whispering, "It's better this way," he'd believed him. "I didn't kill her," Adrian muttered. "I didn't." "No," Eleanor said softly. "But you watched." A faint breeze swept across the lake, rippling its surface. Eleanor lifted the Polaroid of him again, the one she had just taken. The image had developed fully now. Adrian's face stared back, pale, wet, terrified. She traced the outline of his jaw with her fingertip. "You've been trying to save me all this time," she said, "because you thought if you saved me, you could forgive yourself." He looked up at her. "And you? What do you want?" Her eyes glimmered with something between sorrow and serenity. "To remember and to end it." From behind them came the sound of footsteps. Vincent Rowe emerged from the fog once more, his coat trailing like a shadow. His face was pale, his expression serene. "I see you found the truth," he said softly. "All of it." Eleanor turned toward him slowly. "You murdered her." "I saved you," he corrected. "She was destroying you. You couldn't live as two. I did what had to be done. You drowned her." Eleanor's voice cracked, raw with fury and grief. Vincent's tone remained calm. "No, my dear. You drowned yourself. I only helped you survive." "Liar," Adrian spat, raising the gun again. Vincent smiled faintly. "You won't shoot me, son. You're too much like me." Adrian's hands trembled. His eyes flicked between his father and Eleanor. Vincent took a slow step forward. "Put the gun down," he murmured. "You've both seen what happens when memory becomes madness. Let me take care of it. One last time." Eleanor stepped in front of Adrian, her expression suddenly peaceful. "No," she said quietly. "This time I decide what to forget." She raised the camera one final time and pointed it at Vincent. The old man froze. "Eleanor." Flash. The white light flooded the clearing, brighter than the moon, swallowing them all. When Adrian's vision cleared, Vincent was lying on the ground. The photograph fluttered down beside him, face down. Eleanor stood over the body, the camera still smoking faintly in her hands. The air was utterly still. Adrian dropped to his knees beside his father. "He's dead," he whispered. Eleanor stared at the Polaroid for a long time, then bent down, turning it over. The picture showed Vincent's face, eyes closed, peaceful, and behind him the faint reflection of the lake, rippling like a wound healing itself. At the bottom, written not in ink but in wet red streaks, were the words, "Now we remember." They buried Vincent Rowe at dawn. In the woods overlooking the water, neither spoke. The sky was pale pink, the mist rising like a ghost from the lake's surface. Afterward, Eleanor stood at the shore, her reflection trembling beside her. Adrian approached quietly. "What happens now?" She smiled faintly. "Now I live. Hey, Blade?" He studied her face the way her eyes carried both warmth and shadow. "And Lena?" Eleanor's gaze drifted over the water. "She's part of me, always was, always will be." Adrian hesitated. "You could leave," he said. "Start over. Forget all of this." She shook her head. "No more forgetting." She lifted the camera one last time and took a picture of the sunrise over the lake. When the image developed, She smiled a small, trembling, human smile. For the first time, the photo didn't bleed. As she turned to leave, Adrian caught her wrist. "Eleanor," he said quietly, "for what it's worth, I'm sorry." She looked at him for a long time. Then she placed the new photo in his palm. "Keep it," she whispered. "It's proof that we were real." And with that, she walked away, disappearing slowly into the rising light. The morning breeze stirred the surface of the lake, carrying her reflection with it, two faces blending into one before fading completely. Adrian stood alone by the water, the Polaroid in his hand. The picture shimmered in the sun, and as the image settled, he saw it faint. At the very edge of the frame, two women standing side by side, smiling, Eleanor and Lena, and beneath them, in delicate handwriting that hadn't been there before, "Love never dies. It only remembers." Yes. Chapter 8, The Woman Who Remembered. The days that followed the storm drifted like a fever dream, muted skies, cold light, everything washed clean yet heavy with what could never be undone. The lake had gone still again, its surface like glass, holding the reflection of a world pretending to be peaceful. Eleanor lived in a small apartment above an antique bookstore on the edge of the city. The walls smelled faintly of dust and rain. She spent most mornings sitting by the window, sketching the outlines of faces she couldn't forget, some alive, some long gone, some her own. Each night she dreamt of the water, not of drowning, not of death, but of silence. She never saw Adrian again after that last morning. He left her a letter, written in his careful, restrained handwriting. "I will carry the truth so you don't have to. If you ever come back to the lake, you'll find me there." She folded the note neatly and tucked it between the pages of an old book titled The Mind's Mirror. She never opened it again. But sometimes, when she passed the edge of the river that bled into Blackwood Lake, she would see the faint outline of a man standing among the reeds, watching, waiting, as if guarding a grave that had already forgiven him. She never waved, and he never moved. A year later, the bookstore owner died. Eleanor bought the shop. She filled its shelves with stories of ghosts, memory, and redemption. Every book she touched seemed to hum faintly, as though the paper itself remembered the lives it had seen. Sometimes customers would pause before her, studying her face. "You look familiar," they'd say, and she would smile softly. "Maybe in another life," she'd reply. But one evening, as she was closing the store, she noticed a small, dust-covered package waiting on the counter. No return address, no name. Inside, a single Polaroid. Her shop, taken from across the street through the glass window. In the photo, she was sitting behind the counter, head bent over a book, and in the background, faint but unmistakable, a second figure stood beside her, a woman with long dark hair, smiling gently. "Lena." The handwriting beneath the image read, "We kept our promise." Eleanor's breath caught. For a long time, she simply stared at it, the edges trembling in her hands. Then she turned the photo over. The back was blank, no ink, no mark, only a faint water stain shaped like a fingerprint, her own. That night, she dreamed again. The lake shimmered beneath a full moon, the air warm and still. Across the water, a figure in white stood waiting. Lena. But this time, there was no fear, no haunting, no accusation, only peace. Eleanor walked into the water, the ripples parting around her like silk. When she reached the center, Lena took her hand. "You came back," Lena whispered. "I never left," Eleanor said. They stood together in the moonlight, their reflections merging into one. Two lives, two memories, two halves of a broken whole, finally reunited. The surface of the lake glowed faintly, shimmering like film catching light, and when the wind moved across it, it carried away the last whisper of their names. At dawn, a young woman from the village came to the lake to paint the sunrise. She found something half buried in the sand, a Polaroid, worn and soft from the water. In it, two women stood side by side at the edge of the lake, holding hands, smiling. No blood, no shadows, just light. There was no writing on this one, only the faint reflection of the rising sun behind them. The girl tucked the photo into her pocket and began to paint. When she looked up again, the surface of the lake shimmered once more, and for a moment, just for a moment, she could swear she saw the two women still standing there, watching her, their faces calm, their eyes full of life. Epilogue: the photograph that remained. Years later, when the bookstore changed hands, the new owner found a sealed envelope hidden behind the cash register. Inside was one final photograph. It showed the bookstore interior, sunlight flooding through the front window, books scattered like fallen leaves. At the counter sat Eleanor, her hands resting over an open novel, and behind her, reflected faintly in the window glass, Lena's silhouette, her head resting gently on Eleanor's shoulder. Scrawled beneath it, in delicate handwriting that shimmered faintly under the light, were the last words she ever wrote. To remember is to forgive. To forgive is to live. Outside, the rain began to fall again, soft, steady, and endless. And somewhere, in the reflection of a window, two sisters smiled through